Good afternoon, Berkeley City College community. I know that we have folks joining us. This is our Educational Master Plan Campus Forum. Today is Friday, February 3rd, and we are recording this webinar because we know that there are some colleagues that are not able to join us today, but we want to make sure that they have access to the information. So please just be aware of that. If throughout the presentation you have questions or comments, please feel free to use the chat function. It is an open meeting in that sense. The leadership team and others that are on this will do our best to answer questions either as we go along, but at the very end will certainly be more than enough time to engage in discussion and additional questions. So I'm just providing some introductory comments as we have a few more colleagues join. And what I want to do is afford us the opportunity to just ground ourselves in the fact that we are amidst Black History Month, ground ourselves amidst the current context of recent happenings across the country and the ways in which communities are coming together, especially in support of the Black community. Want to acknowledge and thank Ramona. I always look forward to this year and her daily educational tidbits of notable African Americans, Black contributing members of the community. So thanks, Ramona. I see that you're on this particular call, and please take time to read those. Incredibly informative, and my own children have asked me to commit to sharing at dinner at the end of each day who I learned about today. So Ramona, thank you for the gift that you're sharing with my family as well. I also want to take a moment to recognize that we're coming off and into celebration of the Lunar New Year, and there's so many celebrations that have taken place, including the San Francisco parade that will take place this weekend. So to our AAPI community members, wishing you all a beautiful and celebratory Lunar New Year. Now, for the remainder of our time, we have a presentation of the Educational Master Plan, and it is an opportunity to give a little bit of recap of what we've done. But what I want to just continue to ground us in is that the work of the Educational Master Plan should be one that has community input, that wrestles with incredibly challenging questions, that centers students, and that is aware of the community that we serve. I believe that the work that we've done at Berkeley City College actually addresses all of that. I believe that this iterative process you're going to see is taking into account all of the discussions that have taken place, whether in participatory governance meetings, in the EMP steering committee, in roundtable, in conversations and discussions. And I am so proud of the work that we are doing, and I have total confidence that when all is said and done, this Educational Master Plan is going to serve as this roadmap for the next 5 years. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Stacy Shears, who is going to begin the presentation. And again, please put your questions in the chat. We'll do our best to answer along the way, or at least we'll know what your questions are towards the end. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Stacy, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia, and welcome everyone. Tenelyn, do you mind just sharing our presentation? Thank you. Okay, so welcome to our campus forum for our Educational Master Plan 2024 through 2028. That feels like a futuristic thing, but that's what we're planning for. Next slide. Here's our agenda. We're going to do an introduction and review of our process with the EMP, review the steering committee members and college timeline, the status of the EMP draft, our EMP goal and shared vision, our measures of success, and questions and answers and feedback. And there'll be a few of us doing that, not all me, of course. Next slide. Okay, our recap. So where have we been so far for building our Educational Master Plan? So we started out June 22nd of 22 in a cabinet retreat where we reviewed initiatives and outcomes from the 21-22 year. And we completed a Dream for BCC exercise where we suspended all rules and structures and reflected on a couple of prompts. What would it look like for BCC to contribute to ending generational poverty in our local community? And what would it look like for BCC to reverse the impact of gentrification and support for local community members to continue to live in the area for generations to come? So we reviewed disaggregated data on BCC's current progress towards equitable outcomes that were all centered on the lens of equity. And our senior researcher, Dr. Pumi Sayavong, and faculty special assignment recipient, Dr. Becky G, conducted research on the preliminary EMP goals through the lens of equity and ending poverty and gentrification. Next slide. So what we came up with were some preliminary strategic priorities for the educational master plan, and they were student completion, teaching and learning, data-informed processes and innovations, community partnerships, human capital development, fiscal sustainability, diversity, equity, inclusion in the global community, and advanced technology and facilities. And now I will kick it over to Cooney. Next slide.
Thank you, Stacy. Hi, everyone. So how are we approaching our EMP development, and how are we interfacing and collaborating with the district office is what this 3 slides are going to be informing you. So on a high level, one thing that you have heard probably by now is that we are taking a little bit of different approach in this EMP development. What that is that normally we are the multi-college district, therefore the district office would frame their EMP and strategic plan, and that usually leads the 4 colleges to follow to make alignment. But for this particular EMP, the college, it's a grassroots movement where the colleges are kicking off its own EMP, and that's going to be informing the district services and then how they will be framing their next 5 years of plan. So having said that, here is the timeline. I don't have to unpack it every line, but this is really about 22-23 this year, and the Chancellor's Cabinet started off on in the summertime, and then initial meeting started off in the summertime to beginning of the semester, and then the EMP template along with the West Ed partners have been formulated in August, September last semester early on. And then the data analysis has been collected from July all the way to December last semester, as well as the qualitative data. And then advisory committee meeting has been initiated in analyzing the data and in the draft template. And then many of you participated in November. We have to change that. It was November 2022. Charrettes happened at Laney College, and many of us participated in along with the community partners. And that outcome has also been tallied and then examined, and it is informing us with the draft of our EMP. And then advisory committee meeting has started, and then the district strategic plan will kick in this semester around March and May. And then the college EMP will be done in May, at the end of this academic year, in May or April or May. Next slide, please. And we have had this conversation at the shared governance, participatory governance space. And we wanted to keep the EMP steering committee to be small, but it is represented from each constituency group. So you can see the names of the folks who are here. Particularly, we would like to thank Classified Senate President Andrea Williams and Dr. Sayabang, Senior Research and Planning Analyst, and then also Academic Senate Representative Fatima Shah, and then also Christiane is the associate students who have really been contributing a great deal. So we really appreciate all of your contribution. Next slide. Thank you. And here's the BCC EMP timeline, and it really coincides with the high level one that you saw with the district planning. But so we started, what Stacy has summarized at the beginning is the work of what started in June and July and continued on into September. And we have framed our timeline for this year for completion. And then a kickoff meeting started in August, and steering committee was formulated in September. And then that group have been meeting since then until early January. And focus group, which Pumi is going to be drilling down a little bit about that later, but July to December from different constituencies, groups. And then steering committee, so we met that, okay. All data and tables and analysis have been completed in December. And we are in the process of synthesizing those outcomes of the data and then findings and putting into a draft form, which also will be updated to you by Pumi later. And then we plan to complete the first draft of EMP by mid-February, which is the reason why we are really seeking all of your feedback today. And then we'll incorporate everything, all the environmental scan and everything else, and also our vision of the 5 years from now. What do we see ourselves be, and then where are we going with that? And that's going to be included into February, March draft making. Next slide, please. And, you know, every time like we have a formulated draft, and it'll be going out to all of you for review and feedback, coming back, and then we'll fine tune it, just like ICER. And then we'll shape it to be the BCC's EMP. And we plan to have everything done, going through the roadshow for the participatory governance in May, and then conclude our the final product in May. Thank you. And I'm going to popcorn over to Pumi.
Right, thanks, Kenny, for the update on the timeline. As you can see, the timelines are it's fairly tight, and what's great is that we have a number of people helping to work on this. So what I'm about to share here is an update on what the draft is looking like. So our educational master plan. Now we work very closely with West Ed. So Kelsey Crossan and her amazing team of analysts and researchers have always been extremely responsive to our needs. And so although we saw the initial draft that was constructed, we were still able to modify, customize it, and make it much more personal to Berkeley City College. So we're really grateful for that, that level of flexibility. As soon as we got the draft, all of the members of President's Cabinet have been taking the lead on helping to provide content. So in the initial content, because we do have access to a lot of information, we don't necessarily write every single component, but we do bring in people with areas of expertise to help provide some of the details that would be relevant for us to provide a very concrete, a very clear explanation, rationale, and descriptions for that leads us to eventually to the goals for the next 5 years. So just a few examples of what the content include, and on the right-hand side, you can kind of see the exact outline of the draft. And so we, of course, would cover the background, the college offerings, some of the major offerings that we have, examine more closely and provide a lot of detail that addresses our enrollment, you know, the past, the current, and of course, what we expect for the future and what we anticipate. We also look at outcomes because that's going to help determine some of our strategies and goals. Of course, a very thorough environmental scan that looks at the job market and where the demands are, what the wages look like, because it goes back to our vision to ensure that we're helping to close the wealth gap, to providing enough support and access for our students so they can eventually earn a living wage, so they can live in the community for generations to come. And then eventually we'll be sharing with you the strategies, initiatives, and programs, and then we incorporating again a lot of justification and research behind the ultimate goals for the next 5 years. So we'll be referencing quite a bit of research, some best practices from both instructional and student support practices, and then culminates to identifying and setting our goals, strategies, and the metrics and how we're going to evaluate ourselves on our success over the next 5 years. And coming very soon will be more opportunities. So the EMP steering committee members will get a really close review. We'll have conversations to get them to get their input. And then as soon as we have another draft available, we will circle that across all the participatory governance committees, of course, and so they can have ample time to review and provide their input. Next slide. And so here we are, our most updated draft, our educational master plan shared vision. So from the first couple of slides, you saw our preliminary goals. Now, the challenge after that was to make sure that we can modify and restructure it to make it actionable, to make them measurable. So we've formatted it in this way. And so as you may notice here, we haven't really lost much of the components from the initial list of goals. Whereas here we have a clear vision, a clear roadmap that's going to lead us to that ultimate goal of equitable student completion. So we start with our strategies for success, and that includes practice data-informed processes and innovations, institutionalize culturally relevant professional development, invest in BCC's vision and goals, advocate for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and secure strong community partnerships. With these strategies, how do we know that we are successful? So we've identified 3 main indicators for success, and they are student engagement and success, responsive teaching and student support, and inclusive community. So together with these strategies and indicators of success, by the end of our 5-year, we hope to achieve our equitable student completion. So how do we know? As I mentioned earlier, here are some examples of how we will be measuring our success, our strategies and our indicators. So again, these are just examples. They're not a complete list, and they have not been vetted by several people on the campus with more expertise in some of these areas. So this is just our initial list of examples that we've compiled. So you can look through them. I'll read out a few examples. The first one would be to increase enrollment, specific metrics for African American, Latinx, and AAPI. Improve our fall to spring persistence rates as we are a growing concern for our low enrollments. We want to make sure the in-reach and ensuring that students persist from one term to the next is going to be more critical than in the past. We're also interested in improving our climate indicators. So we're going to improve level of satisfaction across areas of student support, their student sense of belonging, and so on. So we'll provide other types of indicators there. And also what's been touched on through our accreditation at the very end there would be still the goal for us would be the 100% completion of SLO and PLO assessments. Okay. So these are just a limited list, and so we will be compiling them, and we'll also make sure to link them specifically to the specific strategies or indicators. Okay, so now I'm going to pass it over to Tom. We're going to provide an opportunity for feedback. So we're going to ask some questions, and hopefully you'll have an opportunity to provide some feedback and also an opportunity to ask us questions.
All right, thank you, Pumi. Yes, we have ample time here, which is a good thing for feedback. Denelyn, I would just ask you to go to the next slide, please. So this is our question and answer period, but I would also like to pose a couple of questions to you as we look at this visual representation of our 5-year roadmap. The first one being, as you look at this, is anything missing in our 5-year roadmap? And you can either put your comments in the chat, you could raise your hand and provide your comments, and your statements will be recorded. So is anything missing in this visual roadmap? Are there points that we should touch on?
I'm not seeing any raised hands, but I'll just share so you can type your question or make your comment in the chat function. If you would like to make a comment or ask a question live, use the raise hand. So we have one question in the chat. I see inclusive community. Is the BCC community and surrounding community? So this is a question from Ramona Butler. I realized we didn't figure out who was going to answer questions as they came up. So why don't I just say, yes, Ramona, the goal here is that inclusive community is the community within the college campus. And so it's not exclusive just to students. So we're talking students, classified professionals, faculty, administrators, visitors, and then also the surrounding community. Because remember, we were working towards really addressing how we are the community's college. And so that is the intent behind the indicator of success of inclusive community. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I can add to that, Ramona. So Dr. Garcia addressed the maybe more of the employees, so members of the community here at BCC. But for students, as I mentioned earlier, we hear over and over the sense of belonging is really important to students. And so making the link, maybe if it's not with students and faculty and staff, we can still also do more work in creating an inclusive community amongst students and linking that to a higher sense of belonging with us when they're in their classes, when they're receiving our support, and so on. So it is all encompassing, but yeah, but still within the BCC community.
Tom, maybe go with the second
Yeah.
question. Yeah, and then if folks can still answer.
I would
both.
just like to add, just also from a narrative standpoint, you're seeing that these strategies lead into the indicators, which lead to the goals. So each of these points are not exclusive to one indicator of success. So in terms of inclusive community, our data-informed processes, the culturally professional development, and so on, they all lead into the inclusive community indicator of success. And so, yeah, I'll move on to the second question that we have, which is, as you see, what challenges and or needs do we need to address? Are there or maybe opportunities where we can provide more context in this shared vision? And once again, I dropped the link in there too. Feel free if something comes to you later on after our meeting. There is a link at the bottom of the EMP 2024-28 landing page on our website for feedback, where you can leave comments there.
Tom, will you
So
read
the
the questions
question-
as they come in? Go ahead.
Yeah, the question from Jijun: how can we better help students who are pursuing a vocational pathway, ensuring that we also provide ample support for students trying to get back into the workforce?
Great question. I'm gonna take a shot at it. That we have a section of career development, career education and workforce development. And we want to really emphasize the fact that importance of how the pathways are really leading to the vocational pathway. The pathways are leading to the vocational experiences, and then getting a really good job of hopefully their studies that they have done at BCC, and then being able to get a really high wage, as Fumi was mentioning before. So it is a highlighted section, and then we really welcome you to give us some ideas as to what we might want to include, Jijun. Your help would be much appreciated. Thank you.
I can add to that too. I've been made aware that the ESOL department is working closely with their students and trying to provide some clearer pathways for them to move into career educational programs and getting the certificates that's needed. So I think there's a lot more detail that I'm not aware of, but the fact that that work is happening. And on top of that, with our new grant from the federal government, the NPC grant, there is a component in there that will address that specific gap, focusing on ESOL and providing more levels of support, whether it's resources or others strategies to help make that more efficient, more successful. So there's a lot more details to be worked on, but these are we're at the initial stages of trying to pull that together. So I'm extremely hopeful.
Okay. Any additional feedback? What challenges and or needs do we need to address as we look at our 5-year roadmap? Ramona asked, student engagement. Now that we are back on campus, have we considered a survey needs assessment? Ramona, are you talking specifically about just for students on campus?
Just for our students, period, because you know, we have a lot of students who like the online component. I would venture to say that maybe those are students who are about ready to transfer, but then we have other students that really like the on-campus engagement. So what is it that they need? Because now we're post-COVID. It took us so long to learn how to go online, and now that we're trying to get back, it's going to take us some time as well. So like reimagining this, what students need, maybe. I don't know. I just think it's not the same.
Yeah, that's a great point, Ramona, and Dr. Shears certainly agrees with you in her comment. I just want to point out that comment or the question is very much related to one of our strategies there. And so getting or providing a survey to get their feedback, right, to assess what may be new, whether it's an interest, whether it's a different kind of preference or mode of instruction. So it touches on one of our strategies there, which is to practice data-informed processes and innovations. So it may be that, you know, we continue our practices or modify our practices, and other times we might be informed to innovate something different. So it'd be more responsive to our students. So that's a really great point.
I added in the chat that you'll notice that on this particular visual roadmap, we're not putting enrollment, right? So but it's embedded within the concept of engagement, because engagement really begins at the point of working in the local community with prospective students. And so what we're trying to do is move this away from, look, we're just trying to increase students to come to BCC, and really looking at how do we engage the community and how do we engage students to connect with BCC. So I wanted to note that because we did not specifically, it's not specifically called out in this visual roadmap, but it is embedded. And one could argue that it's embedded all throughout, right? That students will come to Berkeley City College if they experience all these things that we are sharing in this visual roadmap.
Okay, we spent about 10 minutes here on the questions that we had for you. I feel like we've gotten more questions than response, but I would just like to leave the floor open for more questions from the community. And it could be about anything in this presentation, not just this visual graphic.
Can we remove that so that maybe we can all see one another? Dana, let's just kind of give that a shot and see now in terms of trying to have a discussion if there are comments or questions. So opening it up. Thank you, Tom, for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I would throw a question just to solicit some feedback. So this is our next 5 years, right? It's an exciting vision that we can all share to kind of think about. But then Ramona's point earlier, it's not going to be the same. I mean, like we had this pandemic thing that just kind of got in the way, and it just really shook our reality. So the conventional way of, thinking about the 5 years in the past that we have done is not going to cut it. So that's a really good point that Ramona has shared with us. How would you all think, given the circumstance, what are some of the things that you think it's really important for us to think about or consider in thinking about our 5 years from now with this rather unique situation moving forward?
Claudia, I see that you've raised your hand.
Yes. So in thinking about what Cooney asked, I think it's moving forward, thinking about the next 5 years, it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach. I hope that we find a way to survey our current students, our incoming students, because we have to think about scheduling, the modalities, the way we offer the classes. I know that other colleges want to go back to quote unquote the way it was before, but I strongly agree with Cooney that we've given these students this opportunity to take courses in different modalities. Our instructors they're not forced to be in the Bay Area per se. And I hope that all that progress that we've made, as faculty members learning how to use Canvas and getting better at it, that it's just not, left aside, that we see that moving forward things are going to be different. So I hope that there's a way to capture that for our specific college and not just the district per se, because I feel like the needs of BCC students differ from those at Merritt, Alameda, and Laney. That's it.
Thank you, Claudia. Sylvia put a comment in the chat that asked, what about teaching the target students, financial workshops, interest rates, student loan. I put a comment in there that said, yes, what about a financial literacy center as part of our basic needs work, as opposed to, so in addition to food pantry and kind of addressing the food component of it, what would it look like if we did have a financial literacy component to how students can address their basic needs within the context of the Bay Area, which is very different than if you're, let's say, in the Central Valley or in rural North California or even Southern California. So appreciate that comment there, Sylvia.
Also, one of the speakers that Dr. Martin Flores brought in, her background is in finance, and her platform, Julissa Arces, the purpose of her background in finance was because she needed to make money because she was undocumented. But that platform was what got her out of that being undocumented. But I think what's important for our population, the school, because you're looking at the impoverished, just simple banking. Like a lot of our students may not know the difference between a credit union and a banking and fees. Those simple things could cost them, and they don't have that much money. A $10 fee is a lot to somebody making $17 an hour as a student worker. So just some of those simple things when we have financial aid workshops, now that they're getting school is free, they may have more liquid funds, but we also want to make them more responsible with those funds and have them, prepare for transfer, because even though they're not paying it here, there's going to be more costs when they transfer, and have them, look at money a different way. And it would be really exciting to see, one of, just to even think about stocks, and stuff like that, because we have a lot of great people on campus that know this stuff that could share their knowledge.
See there, Heather has added to the chat about the textbook costs. And as I'm looking at your picture for OER, Heather, I feel like it's the perfect marketing component, but absolutely, right? What would it mean to utilize OER as a means for students not to maybe choose not to take a class because of that choice? So it seems like in that roadmap that would connect quite beautifully to a responsive teaching and student support. I don't know if you want to add more to that. I know that you all have done some great work and the Academic Senate has taken it on as a key area for continued discussion. Oh, and look at that. Heather saying, look, what about 50% of our classes are zero textbook costs? I think you just made Pumi's day because you are the first person to give an actual metric. Yes.
Well, I'm accidentally logged into the Academic Senate's OERI account.
Oh, okay.
Log out of because I was doing webinars this morning, but I think that's not actually a lofty goal. We're making progress in that, but other campuses that I've looked at, like Skyline College, Cosumnes River College, most of the Los Rios, Compton College, a lot of these folks are, integrating into their educational master plans, reducing textbook costs for students and being really explicit about that goal. Because I think so far it's been a really strong, we've gotten strong support from administration and grassroots support from faculty, but it would be, amazing to have it be like, both to integrate it into the master plan, to make an explicit goal around how many sections we want to have be no textbook cost, and then also braid it in with other initiatives like guided pathways. I think it would be cool if, the student for their first year on campus would have no textbook or materials costs associated with their classes.
Heather, you're on fire right now. I know you're like sounding so calm, but yes, right? Like that's that kind of thinking. All right.
I think, and I know that like
Yeah.
the EMP is a roadmap and is like high level. And I might just be like too literal of a person to.
No, it's perfect. This is exactly
with
what we
them.
need. Great. We are capturing everything since it's recorded, but also in the chat because, we have folks that are saying, Cooney's like, why not 100? We have 5 years to achieve that. I do think that Heather's comment about that first year that students experience a fully OER curriculum, like that would be a huge lift. And so if we were just to run with this concept to kind of think like, what would be the challenges or the needs to realize that? It kind of activates some thinking. That might be something for those of us who maybe if you're not in the classroom necessarily, what are the benefits to that, or what are the needs? Yeah. Other questions or thoughts, contributions? What else do you want to see?
Well, just on that OER perspective from where I'm sitting in marketing, we know how much of a success that providing benefits packages for students has brought in and boosted enrollment in terms of our paying for fees. 1 year of not having to buy books. I mean, that's one of the most common complaints of any student that I can think of. So I'm just picturing having that as a leg in our marketing plan and messaging to students too. It's a unique opportunity for the Bay Area.
Are there any challenges that we anticipate in the next 5 years, given the strategies that we've outlined? Are we being realistic with our strategies and our indicators?
Well, Andrea posed a question, and this was starting off with, remember our original preliminary priority was human capital development. Denellen, if you'll put the visual graphic up, Andrea, that has through various discussions in the EMP steering committee and in other spaces, has moved from what is kind of language in the HR world, because that doesn't really resonate, to be one of invest in BCC vision and goals as a piece. So we'd have to invest in the kind of workforce to make it happen, as well as institutionalizing culturally relevant professional development. So that has shifted from kind of that human capital, but I want to go ahead and take that down now and give you the floor to maybe expound upon your question in case that's not quite what you were thinking. Oh, and of course I'm so sorry. That's why you put it in the chat, because you can't talk right now. My bad. I've clearly missed that cue. So I don't know if others want to jump in, but while Andrea's waiting here.
I was just swallowing, sorry, but I wanted to put it in the chat before I forgot. Well, a few of the meetings that I attended for the EMP steering committee, I think one where myself, Denellen, and me talked about some of the goals that were being developed and area around professional development, adequate staffing. And I apologize if I did not attend the meeting when that was addressed specifically. I think all of these opportunities or engagement goals are important. I guess my concern is around how we can strategize, implement this with the staffing that we have, like whether that is to increase staffing, whether that is to provide professional development, to address your work in a different sort of way. These goals really require some very intentional sort of practices. And I know, again, like some of that is around HR and how many positions we have, and I get that. I guess I'm concerned, like there's things, I know that there's been some there's been some movement around hiring additional faculty classified, which I think is great. And I'm just, I guess, wondering how we will accomplish this with current staffing levels that we have, where people are professionally, what kind of conversations we'll have once we start to implement some of these goals.
Thank you for your comments. I was trying to capture a few of those in the chat. If I somehow missed that,
No,
feel
it's
free
fine.
to elaborate. I don't know that we're going to be able to answer that. I think you're bringing up great points to the question of what are the challenges in moving forward, and certainly others might agree, but I think you summed it up quite nicely with the fiscal, the human resources processes, and also just, you know, what it's going to take to financially support the staffing infrastructure that we say we need to deliver all the things. Yeah, thank you for that.
I would want to add too that I think now that we're in this position, a lot of times, you know, we have really strong cohesion here at BCC, and when we brainstorm, we come up with really good ideas. And one of the ideas that has kind of been on and off, you know, during my time here, it's been around finding additional resources, because we feel that, you know, on an annual basis, we're limited, we're kind of restricted by what's available from the state, from the district. And we've made effort and seeking funding outside of those standard areas, and, you know, we're depending on funding. So we've expanded. So our HSI, our NEPs, and other grants that we've been able to acquire has really helped to provide more resources, right, to our programs, our students. And then so the opportunity here for us, you know, as soon as we agree on the master plan and the roadmap, it's hitting it's allowing us to then hit the road to then maybe find other funding to support some of these ideas where we can anticipate that we're going to struggle a little bit, mostly around funding, you know, our efforts, because we have plenty of ideas. Sometimes they're just not enough to get funded. So I feel like it's both a challenge and an opportunity for us to take this and then maybe find additional funding outside of our typical sources.
I'm just gonna chime in. I was hoping that Cora was still here, but she might have had to go. One of the things that's really different now, post-pandemic especially, and then to Pumi's point about the resources needed to be in the right place, is obviously the online services and online instruction and online way of doing business, even though we are here physically, right? Those things have changed. And so in the next 5 years, how are we going to put the priorities into what really didn't need it so much prior to the pandemic, but now it's the needs are greater and changing. So I think online related day-to-day instruction services and anything that's related to that, it's going to be a different priority that we might have to put that wasn't so much of a highlight. So I know that DE coordinators across the district are working on that, but I think that's an important factor for us to capture so that we have a good plan.
One thought that Cooney's comment just made me think of was about, are there particular either certificates, programs, degrees that one can consider as fully online, which might make sense and generate a kind of more accessibility for students if we did that. One of the things that having to address going into this remote space during the pandemic is that it taught us that, yes, there are some students where maybe it was not as successful. There are maybe some faculty, classified professionals, administrators who maybe might say that wasn't as successful for me, but we also have seen for a good number of our students, a level of accessibility and connection has shifted. And so maybe if we were to entertain the question of a fully online experience by choice, not because a pandemic forced us to do it, what might that look like? And I think that the culmination of all of our experience and area of expertise, starting with kind of the students, gives us a chance to learn from that, right? So that might be something for exploration down the road. I was also thinking about adult learners and what it means. While we've had amazing growth, and I think that our local K through 12 partners see us as a good partner for dual enrollment, I continued work in that area and how it's connected to guided pathways, but what would it look like, or how do we ask ourselves the question from an engagement perspective, what do we need to do differently to engage adult learners, folks who are returning back to school? Might that now require a little bit more of our attention? Again, I don't know what the answer is, but these are questions to ask that will inform a college strategic plan, which will then inform an enrollment management plan and a technology plan and a facilities, right? It's going to help us build to where we need BCC to be as a college, as an infrastructure for students in the community. We are at 1:23. Happy to hold this space some more. There have been some great comments in the chat. Tom, if you wouldn't mind dropping the link again for the feedback form, in case folks find themselves wanting to utilize the website that's been created. For those EMP steering committee members that are online here, at one point, I know that Andrea's here. Fatima was on at one point, not sure if yes, Fatima's online. We're going to be taking this information and bringing it back to the EMP steering committee and now going into conversations about how we support the development of these metrics. And then folks, you should expect to hear from your representatives in your constituency group spaces, additional follow-up questions, and if you're like me, you're sitting with this down the road and you have a little thought, use the link to make it a form, send us an email. The bottom line is we want to make sure that you're getting the chance to share questions and give inputs. And if maybe even the input is, I think this is crazy, this doesn't make any sense to me, please also share that. Your questions, your comments, your critiques, all of it makes us tighter in our work. Team, are you seeing any other questions or hands raised? No. Okay. Well, I would really like to thank everyone for participating today. This is being recorded. It will be shared, as there were a lot of community meetings happening on a Friday during this time. I want to give a special recognition to folks who presented. So to Pumi and Tom, Cooney, Stacy, Denelyn behind the scenes, and all the folks that have contributed. I see that Becky is online, and that started with Becky and Pumi research last summer. It's really great to see the fruition come to this point. Hey there, Becky. And it's iterative. We're still a work in progress. As you can see, even the visual roadmap was I still don't know what we were calling it, kind of looked like a circular gear of some sort, has now, via all these discussions, become the visual graphic for our roadmap to date. And so who knows, there might be additional revisions. Thank you so very much for the work that you do to support students. And thank you for the work that you do to support one another. I know that students are our core and they are why we do this work, but I hope that you feel that your colegas, your colleagues are also there for you. Okay, thank you all for joining us for today's forum.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Yeah, bye-bye, everybody.